Hello, my friends. Welcome back to English Room. Come in, sit down, make yourself comfortable. Before we begin today, I want to ask you something personal. Think of the most important person in your life. Maybe it is your mother. Maybe it is your husband or wife. Maybe it is your oldest, most trusted friend. Now imagine this. Imagine that one day, without warning, that person is gone. The chair where they used to sit is empty. The sound of their voice has disappeared from your home. The world looks exactly the same as it did yesterday, but it feels completely different. It feels hollow, which means empty inside, like a shell with nothing in it. What would you do with that pain? Most of us cry. Most of us grieve. And to grieve means to feel a deep sadness after losing someone you love. We grieve, and slowly, over time, we find a way to carry on. But one man, almost 400 years ago, did something that no one had ever done before. He took his grief and turned it into the most beautiful building the world has ever seen. This is not just a story about a building. This is a story about what love really looks like when it is tested, when it survives distance and time and death itself. This is the love story behind the Taj Mahal. To understand the Taj Mahal, we must first understand the man who built it. His name was Prince Khurram. He was young, powerful, and destined, which means chosen by fate, to one day rule one of the greatest empires in history. The Mughal Empire stretched across most of what we now call India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. It was an empire of extraordinary wealth, culture, and art. But on one particular afternoon, none of that mattered. Prince Khurram was walking through a famous marketplace called the Mina Bazaar. It was a place full of noise and color, vendors calling out their prices, silk fabrics glowing in the sunlight, the warm smell of spices drifting through the crowded streets. And then he saw her, a girl, sitting quietly among the noise and the chaos. Her name was Arjamand Banu Begum. She was 15 years old. She was selling silk threads and glass beads at a small stall. There is a beautiful word in many languages for the moment when you see someone and you feel your whole world shift. In English, we sometimes call it love at first sight. It means falling in love the very first moment you see someone. For Prince Khurram, this was that moment. He approached her stall. He picked up a piece of glass, looked at her, and said that he wanted to buy it. But, and this tells us a great deal about her character, she did not melt in front of the prince. She looked at him calmly and said the glass was worth far more than he had offered. She was witty. Witty means clever and quick with words. She was not afraid of a prince. She spoke to him as an equal. He was completely captivated, which means he was enchanted, unable to think of anything else. He went home that evening and told his father that he had found the woman he wanted to marry. His father smiled. He already knew her family. The match was considered perfect, but life, even in a palace, does not always move quickly. They had to wait 5 years before they could marry. 5 years of unknowing the other person existed. 5 years of patience and longing. And longing means a deep, quiet ache for something you want but cannot yet have. Finally, in the year 1612, they were married. It was a grand celebration that lasted days. And on that day, Prince Khurram gave his new wife a new name. He called her Mumtaz Mahal. In the Persian language, This means the jewel of the palace, or, as some translate it, the chosen one of the palace. It was the most personal gift he could give her. Not gold, not jewels. A name that said, "You are the most precious thing in my world." Years passed. Prince Khurram became Emperor Shah Jahan, a name that means king of the world. He ruled over a vast empire. He made decisions every day that affected millions of people. He commanded armies, negotiated with kings from other countries, and managed a court full of politicians who were always competing for power. It was an enormous, exhausting responsibility. And through all of it, Mumtaz Mahal was beside him. This is important to understand. In that time and culture, queens and empresses were expected to remain inside the palace. They were expected to raise children, manage the household, and stay far away from the business of ruling a country. Mumtaz Mahal broke that expectation quietly and completely. Shah Jahan trusted her judgment more than he trusted anyone else. When he faced a difficult decision, he talked it through with her. When he received letters from foreign leaders, he asked for her opinion. She had a quality that is rare in any person, in any era. She could see a situation clearly, without fear or self-interest. Her advice was wise, because it was honest. She also had compassion, which means a deep feeling of care for others who are suffering. People who were poor or in trouble would sometimes appeal to her directly, and she would bring their stories to the emperor. Many people were helped because of her quiet influence, and she was loyal. When Shah Jahan had to travel, sometimes for months, sometimes to places of real danger, Mumtaz Mahal went with him. She traveled on horseback and on elephants. She slept in military tents in the middle of campaigns. She was not interested in the comfort of the palace if it meant being separated from her husband. They had 14 children together over 19 years of marriage. Think about that number for a moment. 14 children, 19 years. They were never far apart. Their life together was not a quiet, peaceful story. It was a full, loud, complicated, beautiful story, full of movement and noise and love. People who knew them said that Shah Jahan was a different man when Mumtaz was in the room. He laughed more easily. He was softer, more generous. She brought out the best in him, and he knew it. In 1631, Shah Jahan was called south to deal with a military rebellion. A rebellion is when people rise up against their ruler. He traveled to a place called Burhanpur. Mumtaz Mahal, pregnant with their 14th child, went with him. She had made this journey before. She had always been beside him. There was no reason to think this time would be different. But it was. After giving birth to a healthy baby girl named Gauhar Ara, Mumtaz became very ill. The doctors who attended her were the best available, but medicine in the 17th century could not do what medicine today can do. They watched helplessly as her condition worsened. Shah Jahan did not leave her side. Imagine being the most powerful man in the world and feeling completely powerless. He could command armies. He could build cities. He could change the fate of millions with a single order. But he could not keep the woman he loved alive. Mumtaz Mahal died on the 17th of June, 1631. She was 38 years old. Before she died, she made 2 requests of her husband. The first was that he take care of their children. The second was that he build her a tomb so beautiful that the world would never forget her. He promised. He held her hand. and he promised. And then she was gone. The grief that followed was unlike anything the court had ever witnessed. Shah Jahan, the king of the world, stopped functioning. He stopped eating properly. He refused to wear his royal jewels or his fine clothes. He would not listen to music, and music had always been one of his great joys. For an entire week, no one heard him speak. When he finally emerged from his private chambers, the court was shocked. His beard, which had been dark, had turned white. Not slowly, but in weeks. The doctor said it was the physical effect of extreme grief on the body. He was 40 years old. He looked like an old man. For 2 full years, no celebrations were held in the royal court. No music, no festivals, no dancing. An empire of millions held its breath with its emperor. But inside the silence, something was forming. A vision. A promise he intended to keep. Shah Jahan began to plan. He was an emperor, but he was also an artist at heart. He loved architecture, the art of designing and creating buildings, more than almost anything else. He had already built beautiful structures across his empire. But this one would be different. This one would not be built for power, or to impress foreign visitors, or to demonstrate the might of the Mughal Empire. This one would be built for love. He chose a location on the banks of the Yamuna River in the city of Agra. The site was perfect. The river would reflect the building like a mirror. Gardens could be arranged symmetrically, and symmetry means that both sides of something are exactly equal, like a reflection. He wanted the building to feel balanced and peaceful, like the soul of the woman it was built for. He chose white marble. This was unusual. Most grand buildings of the era used red sandstone, a warm-colored local stone. But Shah Jahan wanted white. White was the color of purity, the color of a soul released from the world, the color of something that glows in the dark. The marble was quarried, which means cut from the earth, in a place called Makrana, more than 300 kilometers away. It was transported by a fleet of over 1,000 elephants. 20,000 workers were brought together from across Asia and Persia. There were master calligraphers, artists who write words in beautiful decorative styles. There were stone carvers. There were gem setters who worked with precious stones smaller than a fingernail. There were architects from Persia, craftsmen from Central Asia, and laborers from across India. The precious stones alone came from across the known world. Deep blue lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, green jade from China, blood red carnelian from Arabia, turquoise from Persia. These stones were cut into tiny shapes and set into the white marble using a technique called pietra dura. And pietra dura means hard stone in Italian. The result was breathtaking. Flowers and vines made of gemstones, blooming permanently on white walls. Shah Jahan was involved in every detail. He reviewed drawings. He requested changes. He rejected designs that were not perfect enough. Nothing about this building would be ordinary. Nothing would be done quickly or cheaply. It took 22 years to complete. 22 years. Let that settle in your mind for a moment. A whole generation of workers spent their careers on this single building. Children who were born when construction began had grown into adults by the time it was finished. That is what a promise looked like. When the Taj Mahal was finally finished, people came from across the world just to look at it. And they still do today. Almost 8 million people visit the Taj Mahal every year. They come from every country on earth. They speak hundreds of different languages. But when they see it for the first time, they all tend to do the same thing. They go quiet. There is a word in English for this feeling: awe. Awe is a mixture of wonder, admiration, and something close to disbelief. It is the feeling of seeing something so extraordinary that your brain struggles to process that it is real. The Taj Mahal produces awe. The great white dome seems to float above the building rather than rest on it. The four tall towers, called minarets, stand at each corner like silent guardians. The long reflecting pool stretches out in front so that on a still morning you see two Taj Mahals, one in the sky and one in the water. And the light is perhaps the most magical thing of all. At sunrise, the marble turns a soft, warm pink, the color of something tender and new. At midday, under the full force of the sun, it becomes an almost painful white, like looking at a diamond. In the evening it shifts to a golden amber. And on nights when the full moon rises, the entire building glows silver, as if it produces its own light from the inside. It seems alive. It seems to breathe. The interior is equally extraordinary. The walls are covered with calligraphy, verses from the Holy Quran, written in black marble against white, curving and flowing like music made visible. The flowers made of precious stones never wilt, never fade. They are the most permanent flowers in the world. And in the center of the building, in a quiet, dimly lit room, are two tombs. One belongs to Mumtaz Mahal, and the one beside it belongs to Shah Jahan himself. This was not part of the original plan. Shah Jahan had imagined building his own tomb on the other side of the river, connected to the Taj Mahal by a bridge. His tomb, he had dreamed, would be made of black marble, a mirror image of the white one he had built for Mumtaz. But he never got the chance. In his final years, Shah Jahan's world grew very small. His sons began to fight for the throne while he was still alive, a brutal struggle for power that tore the royal family apart. His son Aurangzeb won that struggle, and in 1658 placed his own father under house arrest in the Agra fort. House arrest means you are not put in a prison cell, but you are not free to leave. You live in one place, like a bird in a cage. The Agra fort was beautiful. Shah Jahan was kept in rooms with fine carpets and good food. By the standards of history, he was treated reasonably well. But he was a prisoner, the king of the world, reduced to a man who could not walk out of his own front door. There was, however, one mercy. From a particular window in his chambers across the river, he could see the Taj Mahal. Every day, for 8 years, he sat at that window. He watched the building he had created change color with the hours. He watched it shimmer in the summer heat. He watched it disappear into the monsoon mist and reappear, solid and white and permanent, when the rains cleared. He watched it, and he remembered. The girl in the marketplace, her quick eyes and her sharp answer about the price of glass. 19 years of traveling together, arguing together, building a life together. Her hand in his as the light faded. In 1666, Shah Jahan died in that room at the age of 74. His daughter Jahanara, who had stayed with him throughout his imprisonment, was by his side. His body was taken across the river and placed beside Mumtaz Mahal, exactly as she had asked him to promise 35 years before. The black marble tomb was never built. There was no matching monument on the other side of the river. There was only this: one white building, two tombs, one story. My friends, we have reached the end of our journey. The Taj Mahal is listed as one of the 7 wonders of the world. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means it is recognized as a treasure that belongs not to one country, but to all of humanity. It has been painted, photographed, written about, and dreamed about for centuries. But here is what I want you to remember. All of that marble, all of those precious stones, all of those 22 years of work, none of it began with architecture. None of it began with ambition or politics or the desire for power. It began with a man sitting alone in an empty room, missing his best friend. The Taj Mahal is not a monument to the Mughal Empire. It is not a monument to the wealth of a king. It is a monument to the feeling of loss and to what some people will do, rather than let that loss be silent. Shah Jahan could not bring Mumtaz back. No building can do that. But he could make sure that as long as human beings walked the earth, her name would be spoken. Her story would be told. The love between them would never be reduced to a date on a calendar. And 400 years later, here we are, sitting together, saying her name, Mumtaz Mahal, the jewel of the palace. She is not forgotten. The next time someone asks you what love looks like, you do not need to describe a feeling. You can simply say, it looks like white marble on the banks of a river, glowing silver in the moonlight, built by a man who made a promise and kept it for 22 years. That is what love looks like when it is real. Thank you for spending this time with me in the English room. Take care of yourselves. Hold the people you love a little closer today. And remember, the most beautiful things in the world are always built from the heart. Goodbye for now. I will see you in the next story.